This is Studio 7 on YouTube West. And today I'd like to talk to you about a 2020 movie, that's right, a COVID release film, folks, called Greyhound, starring Tom Hanks. Now, Greyhound was scheduled to be released to the theaters, but unfortunately, the group Playtone decided to release it to Apple to direct pay, and they did it during a promotional period where Apple gave you 10 days free to watch anything you wanted, which meant that millions of people, like myself, signed up for Apple TV for 10 days free and then watched Greyhound, meaning that even though it could have been a box office smash, being a World War II era destroyer convoy movie, it ended up being a not so productive film and missed by a lot of people because some people had already done their trial with Apple TV and found what I found was, and that was that with Apple TV, it's always something extra. And they didn't get to watch the movie. So when Greyhound comes out, it comes out to a limited audience, only a few people see it, and it eventually just dies a quiet and horrible death, which it probably did not deserve. Now, Greyhound stars Tom Hanks in a World War II movie where he is a destroyer captain in charge of two other destroyers as well and is escorting a convoy across the Atlantic to England. Now, the beauty of this movie is that there aren't a lot of people alive who remember World War II. So there's not a lot of people to be offended that the movie takes on a more Marvel-esque character and a more updated feeling of filming rather than you would have seen with The Enemy Below with Robert Mitchum in the 1950s. And in some cases, our audience loves that. And in some cases, like myself, we find it rather annoying. Because we know from watching old World War II movies when we were growing up that sometimes action was filled with deep, long voids of nothingness and monotony. And Greyhound doesn't have that. Greyhound does not disappoint. So, you've got a movie that runs 91 minutes long, and it's perfect because it's an action movie. It starts out with action, and it's action all the way. And you have an incredible cast with Stephen Graham, Rob Morgan, Tom Hanks, and Elizabeth Shue. She's not even on the boat. She shows up for a few minutes. This is a World War II story. Guys, if you want a movie with lots of girls bouncing around in it, not your movie. Now, Greyhound is an action movie. Greyhound is filmed aboard an actual World War II class Navy destroyer, and then CGI presents the field around and the feeling around Greyhound to make it work. So a lot of Greyhound is repetitive naval terms, which that's the way it was. And a lot of Greyhound is quick thinking, because when you finally did get into action, again, that's the way it was. So you have a movie that gets you in, gets you on board, and gets you moving quite fast and quite quickly. And I rather enjoyed the film, and I'm sorry some people didn't. So Greyhound runs 91 minutes. It's directed by Aaron Schneider. It was produced by Gary Getzman, and if you don't know who he is, then all you have to do is think The Pacific, think Band of Brothers, think anything on HBO, and there you are, because you have a movie that was distributed by Apple, but it's a Playtone movie. And a lot of people had to come together to make this movie happen, and that always worries me when you see like 9 production companies, Sony, Stage 6, Sycamore, Film Nation, Entertainment, and then Playtone, because it means that the movie may have not been good enough to stand on its own, where one person embraced it, one company embraced it, and brought you this film. And so, it always worries me a little bit. And this one had a right to worry me, because in some of the scenes, some of the noises are like the Marvel movies, and some of the action are like the Marvel movies, or Marvel, or however you pronounce it. And I can't stand comic book movies. Anybody who's watched this channel for a long time knows that I do not normally promote or discuss comic book movies because normally they suck. I know that people like them and people flock to them for the action and they want to be distracted from their daily reality, but they're so bad. They're incredibly bad in most cases, but you eat them up and you love them. And I'm not going to stop you from doing that. Everybody has their own taste. I like dramas, I like comedies, things like Failure to Launch and Sierra with Matthew McConaughey, and I like Tom Hanks movies, like the older ones like Castaway and Forrest Gump. And Tom Hanks does a spectacular job convincing you that he knows how to be the captain of a Navy destroyer. Now, part of the plot is that it's his first time out on the ocean, and that's what they make you think. It's his first time in command. Let me explain something to you about World War II convoy escort duty. Just because it's your first time in command does not mean it's your first time on convoy duty. People don't generally get plucked out of the sky and dropped onto a ship and are told to go into battle to fight individuals or in submarines or planes or whatever it happens to be. It's usually not the case. Most normally, a convoy commander, a escort division commander would have been the captain of a previous destroyer in some other location. Or he would have been a second officer and had made a couple of crossings. This would have given him the experience to know what to do. And what this picture does is it kind of gives you the impression like he doesn't know what he's doing. And there are some falsities in this movie as well that I won't point out heavily, but they're things that would have never happened during World War II in the form of communication, because open communication was a rare thing. Everything was done visually by flag signals, done in code, Morse code, and if it was done in the open with a vocal channel, it was done in a code. It was done in a previous discussion lined out long before you left harbor. Planes simply didn't talk to ships the way you hear it in this movie, but we don't care, and we don't care for good reason. Now, again, Greyhound runs 91 minutes. It's a Sony and Playtone production, and it's set during the Battle of the Atlantic is what we call that. That's ships transiting from North America to London to the UK. Ships traveling from North America to Europe to support the war. And it's during a time when there wasn't a lot of Allied air cover in the middle, and the Germans called it the happy time because they could sink almost anything with impunity. And the Americans called it bad news. And it was left that way for a couple of years till we learned to put a carrier out there in the middle that would serve to cover what they call the GUI, the GIUK gap, which is Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom gap in the ocean where air cover couldn't be provided. And in this case, this convoy consists of 37 ships making its way to Liverpool in the United Kingdom. Now, it had to be CGI because we're not going to blow things up anymore. When I was a kid, we blew a ship up. That's right, we found an old World War II ship and we just blew it up. And that was cool. But now that you have CGI, you have to do certain things a certain way. And even with CGI, this movie does not disappoint. Greyhound is a 6 out of 7 production. It would almost be a 7 out of 7 production except for the inconsistencies. But it's definitely a strong 6 out of 7 production. It's a highly recommended World War II movie, and we get so little good stories, and this one's based on a book called The Good Shepherd by C.S. Forester. It's not the first time this story has been attacked on film. Other films of this nature, of this understanding, might be The Cruel Sea, which is a British war movie, which is also based on that same story, and is an incredible motion picture, or The Enemy Below, with Robert Mitchum and Kurt Jurgens, which is also a great story. So if you get a chance to see either one of those, I highly recommend it. But meanwhile, if you get a chance to see Greyhound, do it. For Studio 7, I'm Bob West on YouTube West. Thank you very much.